Nobody is more alive than I am to the fact that young Bingo Little is, in many respects, a sound old egg. On the other hand, I'm bound to admit there are things about him that could be improved. His habit of falling in love with every second girl he sees is one of them, and another is his way of letting the world in on the secrets of his heart. I mean to say, well, here's the telegram I got from him one evening late November.
I say, Bertie, old man, I'm in love at last. She is the most wonderful girl, Bertie, old man. Come down at once and bring Jeeves. I know when you see her, you'll think she's the most wonderful girl. Bingo.
It had been handed in at Twing Post Office. In other words, he had submitted that frightful rot to the goggling eye of the village postmistress, who was probably the mainspring of local gossip and would have the place ringing with the news before nightfall. He could hardly have given himself away more completely if he had hired the town crier. It's about due, of course, Jeeves. Bingo hasn't been in love for at least a couple of weeks now. I wonder who it is this time.
Oh, Miss Murray Burgess, sir, the niece of the Reverend Ebenstow.
Good Lord, Jeeves, is there anything you don't know?
I really couldn't say, sir.
Well, what shall we do? Go?
I would be inclined to advocate it, sir. I think Mr. Little should be encouraged in this particular matter, sir. I hear nothing but excellent reports of the young lady, sir, and it is beyond doubt that she would make an admirable influence for Mr. Little. In short, sir, I think that if there is anything we can do, we should do it, sir.
Well, with you behind him, I don't see how he can fail to click.
If you can spare me for the night, sir, I would be happy to run down and investigate without inconveniencing you, sir.
Carry on, Jeeves. It's well been said that one of the best ways to implement change is to mercilessly ridicule human behavior. And this is the absolute forte of Sir Pelham Grenville Wodehouse, an early 20th century British author. Many of his best-loved stories center around this dynamic duo of Bertie Wooster, typical upper-class twit, and his ingenious valet, Jeeves. In this particular tale, found in The Inimitable Jeeves, Wodehouse continues to poke fun at Bertie and his friends. Bingo Little endeavors to impress the girl of his dreams by taking over the production of a Christmas pageant. He decides, however, that the Christmas story is too boring, and hence decides to jazz it up a bit with Broadway music numbers. And, well, we'll see how that turns out. So without further ado, The Inimitable Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse. Jeeves got back late the next day.
Well, I have done what I could, sir, but I fear Mr. Little's chances do not appear bright. One is fighting a losing battle, I fear, sir, but I did venture to indicate to Mr. Little a course of action which might prove to be of some advantage, sir. I advised him to busy himself with good works, sir.
Good works?
About the village, sir. Reading to the bedroom, chatting with the sick, that sort of thing, sir. We can but trust that good results will ensue.
I suppose so, but by gosh, if I was a sick man, I'd hate to have a loony like young Bingo come and gibber at my bedside.
There is that aspect of the matter, sir.
One evening not long before Christmas, I came back to the flat pretty late-ish when, tottering into my room and switching on the light, I observed the foul features of young Bingo smeared across my pillow. I hove a shoe. What the deuce are you doing in my bed?
Ah, hello, Bertie. So you're here?
Yes, I'm here. Now, what are you doing in my bed?
I came up to town for the night. On business, you know.
Yes, but what are you doing in my bed?
Bertie, do stop harping about your beastly bed. Bertie, I begin to see daylight.
It's getting on for 3 in the morning.
I was speaking figuratively, idiot. I meant that hope has begun to dawn. You see, I've taken over the job producing the village school Christmas entertainment. I'm hampered a bit, of course, by not having been in on the thing from the start. It's too late to alter the thing entirely, but at least I can jazz it up.
I'll write them in something zippy to brighten the thing up a bit. You can't write. Well, when I say write, I mean pinch. That's why I popped up to town. I went to see that review at the Palace tonight, and then of course tomorrow I can catch the matinee at the Palladium before I head back to Twickenham. Don't you worry about me not being able to write a thing. I'll fix it up quite nicely. What do you think of it, Jeeves?
I confess I am a little doubtful, sir. I think Mr. Little would have been well advised to have followed my advice and confined himself to good works about the village, sir.
I suppose I ought to go down and see the dashed thing.
I think Mr. Little would be wounded were you not present, sir.
I purposely timed myself to arrive not long before the kickoff. I didn't want to run any risk of arriving early and being shoved into a seat in one of the front rows. From where I stood at the back, I had an excellent view of the audience. As always on these occasions, the first few rows were occupied by the nibs, consisting of the squire, his family, a platoon of local parsons, and perhaps a couple of dozen prominent pew holders. Next came a dense squash of what you might call the lower middle classes, and at the back where I was, we came down with a jerk in the social scale to a collection of frankly tough eggs, who had rolled up not so much for any love of drama as because there was a free tea after the show. The thing at the outset was merely one of those weird dramas you dig out of books published at Christmas time and entitled 12 Little Plays for the Tots, or something like that. The audience was settling into the sort of torpor that's usual on these occasions when the first of Bingo's interpolated bits occurred. It's that number that, what's-her-name sings in that review at the Palace. It always went well at the Palace, got 3 encores, and it went well now, even with a squeaky-voiced child jumping on and off the key, like a chamois of the Alps, leaping from crag to crag. There were great chunks of the Plays for the Tots dialogue, and then the girl at the piano struck up the prelude to that Orange Girl number. That's the big hit at the Palladium. It's a dash clever lyric, and the tune's good too, but the thing that really makes the number is the business where the girls take oranges out of their baskets and toss them lightly to the audience. At the Palace, of course, the oranges are made of yellow wool, and the girls don't so much chuck them as drop them limply into the first and second rows. I began to gather the business was going to be treated a bit differently this evening when a dashed great chunk of pips and mildew sailed past my ear and burst on the wall behind me. A second landed with a great squelch on the neck of one of the nibs in the third row, and then a third took me right on the tip of the nose, and I rather lost interest in the proceedings for a bit. When I had scrubbed my face and got my eyes to stop watering, I discovered that the evening's entertainment had begun to resemble one of Belfast's livelier nights. The air was thick with shrieks and fruit. The kids on the stage were having the time of their lives, of course, and the tough eggs had begun to pick up all the oranges that hadn't burst and were shooting them back, so the audience got it both coming and going. And then, just as things had really begun to hot up, out went the lights. To this day, I have never seen a public body so dashed unanimous on any point. To a man, they were cursing poor old Bingo. And there was a large and rapidly growing school of thought which held that the best thing to do would be to waylay him as he emerged and splash him about a bit in the village pond. I went behind and found him sitting in a box in the wings, perspiring pretty freely.
Barty, she was here just now. She told me it was all my fault and that she would never speak to me again. She said she'd take me off properly.
My dear old thing, that is the least of your troubles. Do you realize there's about 200 of Twing's heftiest right outside waiting to tuck you in the pond? For a moment, the poor chap seemed crushed. But only for a moment. There's always been a bit of the good old English bulldog about young Bingo.
That's all right. I can sneak out through the cellar and climb over the wall at the back. They can't intimidate me.